Hi, Amos here with the Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered. Now, a couple of years ago I went to Los Angeles and it's supposed to be in conjunction with a particular event, actually the launch of the sale of Ultimate Ears through earphone. But anyway, they gave me a pair of Ultimate Ears reference monitors, and now these had quite a status among some enthusiasts on HeadFi. To give you an example, they were made, of course, in conjunction with Capital Studios, who wanted a monitor for, basically a reference monitor for monitoring. And even though you sound like monitor sound seems like kind of very boring, actually they had such a good tuning and such a good design that in one of the diary threads on HeadFi, I remember someone asked a question. Basically by that time I think just about everyone had a pair. They asked, has anyone heard any good IEMs lately other than the Ultimate Ears reference monitor? Because, everyone was going to answer the same thing. So they wondering if anything had, come close. Now, of course, they're not very exciting monitors. You can see the reference remastered. I just chose a brown faceplate there. There are no shiny materials here, nothing fancy. You're still your regular plastic, molded plastic. But in this case, this pair was done using the old system. And these ones, however, when I went to CanJam in Los Angeles, they did digital ear impressions, and I thought, well, let's try them. Let's use my digital ear impressions and see how they go. And now these were done by Ultimate Ears, their best professional, and my ear impressions were done by one of their professionals, and these were done by the new digital system. So these came out really well, and the fit came out is excellent. I have never had custom IEM fit trouble at all, but actually these fit a little bit better than the other custom IEMs I've had. So it's actually worked out really, really well, and I took a chance on this because my impressions were over a year old. Now, the interesting thing was, of course, now when people heard that they discontinued the reference monitor and now are going to do the reference remastered, then, is the sound going to change? How much is the sound going to change? Are they going to sound as good? And that's one of the things I wanted to find out. It was an interesting challenge evaluating the Ultimate Ears reference remasters. Now, my previous IEMs are the Ultimate Ears reference monitors, which were, a lot of people really like these. But however, something to consider is they are a studio monitor, and so there have been some sonic changes. But before we get into that, something about the ergonomics. My Ultimate Ears reference monitors were done using the old mold system where someone injects some molding material into your ears and it dries and they take it out, and it's shaped by technicians before making a reverse mold and then the final mold for your IEMs. The Ultimate Ears reference remastered, on the other hand, these were made using the new laser scan system. The interesting result of that is that the comfort, even though this was done by Ultimate Ears top expert, this ended up being more comfortable in the end. Now, what happens after they do the laser scan is they do all the molding and what have you on a computer. So that means they can more accurately change, the shape and adjust the shape, because all these little curves have to be adjusted very slightly to fit most comfortably in your ear. And with these ones, they do fit more comfortably than my Ultimate Ears reference monitors, which are slightly different on either side. Now, the consistency and comfort of fit I really found fantastic with these. Now, Ultimate Ears, as I probably already said in the past, they have a very strong focus on customer service and getting things absolutely perfect for the customer every time. And while I didn't end up doing my factory tour report, when I was there, they were had a very strong emphasis on ensuring that the customer gets an excellent product, down to someone doing a final check on everything before it's sent out. Now, even down to things like the case. Now, the case is interesting. They actually have a factory tour. Part of the factory tour includes a section just on the case. Now, they've gone through a number of case designs in the past. My Ultimate Ears reference monitors came in a interesting rectangular case, which went through a few iterations as they redesigned it. This goes back to the old round style case. Now, if I just get up my good old JH Audio ones, and Jerry Harvey used to run Ultimate Ears, so it's kind of worth noting. Now, you can see there's a very slight increase in size in this one. Now, the old one is, of course, the old screw top. As he opens thus, we've got full of stuff in there at the moment. And the new one has a O-ring, and it just pulls open with a little bit of force, and you've got the O-ring in there. And then you put your IEMs in there. It's got a bigger space inside it, very slightly. And then you close it up. Now, in thickness terms, you can see it's a little bit bigger in all dimensions, but only slightly, but it still is a comfortable size. And they've done a lot of stuff with musicians to ensure that they get the right size for this. And of course, you've got the laser branding on there for you. Now they also offer apparently a square case. Now I haven't looked at that in detail, but that's a new thing I've seen since. Another thing they offer is an impedance adapter, which is worth talking about, because to ensure consistency of performance outside, the wireless transmitters that performers use, they have a little box that ensures that you get a low output impedance since they're multiple balanced armature IEMs, and it also prevents sudden spikes in the sound that you might get if you suddenly get feedback through your microphone and speaker system. So my main comparison, of course, was with the Ultimate Ears Reference Masters. Now, in sound terms, I ran them through a lot of gear, and the interesting thing is they have a fairly flat impedance through the bass. So even if you do have a non-zero output impedance, even if it's a little bit high, such as, say, from my iPhone 6, you still get a consistent frequency response. So they didn't get any kind of drop-in bass or anything like that. But there is a possibility with very high output impedance that you might get a spike in the treble. Now, I don't have the HiBR6 here anymore, which has 10 ohm output impedance to test this, but with most of the gear I had here, even plugging them into the good old Studio 6, which is totally inappropriate for IEMs, they seem to still be fairly consistent, though I do get a little bit of a change in the frequency response all the same. I evaluated them mostly out of the Hugo 2 and Mojo and DAPs and what have you, because that's where they're going most likely to be used. Now, because they're a very popular IEM nowadays, I compared them to the good old Campfire Audio Andromedas. Now, of course, these are a custom IEM, so the consistency in the sound will be consistent. There's no tip rolling, although there is a universal version. The Andromedas, of course, are a universal IEM, so I roll tips on them. Now, being a studio monitor, they have a fairly flat sound. So just like the reference monitors, through the bass through to the mids, they're fairly flat. Now, they've evened up the mids a tiny bit more, and the treble is significantly lower than the reference monitors have. So while it is lower, it's more consistent. It extends better through to 18 kilohertz. Now, there are some measurements online, but really it's without very specialized equipment, it's actually close to impossible to accurately measure out beyond about 12 kilohertz. Now, I'm not sure what's available now. I think there's some very new equipment that can go higher, but all the same, just be a little bit cautious about what you see online about measurements. But I'm going to take Ultimate Ear's word for it. And from what I could hear, there was still a very consistent treble. And the overall performance, say with instrument reproduction, was also very consistent. Now they extend down nicely into the bass. At first when I got them, the bass seemed very absent, and it seemed to be much a repeat of the situation I had with my JH Audio IEMs, in that they needed some time and use before the bass came out. Now, probably something to do with maybe the capacitors inside, or maybe the drivers, I'm not quite sure. There's some discussion about what the cause of this is, but I was talking with someone saying, well, where's the bass gone? And they said, well, mine has plenty of bass. And I thought, well, that's odd. And then I ran them in and they were fine. So all my evaluation from here on is after putting a few dozen hours on them at least. Now, in that, if I listen with them by themselves, like I got up this morning and had a listen, they sound very even, consistently even through different types of music. If there's low bass rumble, there's low bass rumble. It's not very strong. It's not like your Atlases or your Vegas, which have that deep bass, satisfying deep bass rumble. It's a fairly consistent monitor presentation. The central image is very clear. It's very clearly vocals are coming from the center. Maybe a little bit too far forward for listening preference, but again, these are designed to be a studio monitor. And the treble, is clear, but not very bright. It's only if you switch to something like the Ultimate Ears Reference Monitors, or depending on tip selection, the Andromedas, and then switch back to the Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered, that things can sound a little bit more muffled. Now, with things like the extreme example being the Atlas, you have a very big sense of wide soundstage, and my hands are going off the screen here. With the reference remonitored, after listening with other IEMs, it can sound like you're listening, the band's way out the front, and the soundstage is narrower. So you've got this narrow soundstage in which, kind of like Sony monitoring headphones I tried once, where everything seemed kind of less of a wide stereo image and everything kind of in this band in front, whereas other IEMs kind of be wide. And some of that, of course, is to do with the frequency response of the IEMs. You boost the treble, everything sounds kind of more open, whereas you reduce the treble and everything sounds kind of a little bit more kind of muffled, a little bit more closed in. So in comparison, these weren't so impressive, but listening on their own, they can be relaxed and non-fatiguing, and they're pretty neutral. So somewhat, if you're after, a kind of neutral pair of customs, they're not a very flashy design. I mean, this is the flashiest wood I could find for them was this, I think it was burl walnut. I'd have to double check. But they provided everything sounded, none of that IEM treble, or what some people call the balanced armature treble. Instruments were very nice, very clear. very easy to listen with, and you know, the performance was very good. I don't feel they scaled super high. You know, if I wouldn't buy a Hugo 2 just to use with these, I probably, you know, they were very satisfying even out of just the Mojo. And being that they're not so peaky in the treble, satisfying even out of gear, which can tend to irritate me a little bit in the treble, some less expensive gear can. Now, compared to the Andromedas, that sound signature, I'd probably say if I put some foam tips on the Andromedas, the foam tips made them sound, the Andromedas sound even darker than the Reference Remastered do. They do have a similar bass performance. It's still fairly even. I expected the Andromedas to have a stronger bass, but it turned out to be about the same. And as far as I knew, they do measure about the same through the bass. Now, of course, if I roll other tips, I have the final Type E tips on here, which I've been trying since I've reviewed the Atlas. These, of course, these being balanced armature IEMs, tend to make the sound brighter than anything, which is maybe a little bit unexpected, but that's the effect they had with these IEMs. So that brighter treble made them more like the Ultimate Ears reference monitors and less like the Reference Remastered with their more muted treble. But it was hard to pick one or the other. You know, I have a nice cable on here. I have the stock cable on the Reference Remastered. I do have a fancy cable for these I can use. I'd probably say, for preference, maybe the Andromedas have a little bit of an edge in the end. Depending on the setup, they can sound, of course, a little bit wider, a little bit more spacious, whereas, of course, the reference monitors are consistently kind of have that monitor presentation. So, you know, it's kind of apples and oranges comparison, but it should give you an idea. So overall, these, of course, neutral, still with very good performance. And something, you know, if you wanted to maybe, if you're more sensitive to treble and you don't like the brighter kind of dynamic sound, say the reference monitors had a lovely dynamic sound, similar to what the Andromedas can create. Then if you want something a little bit more mellow, you're more sensitive to treble, these may be more interesting as customs for you. And it'll be interesting to compare them to the new Ultimate Ears live version, which is see how they perform and how the treble is on those as well. So overall, really excellent performance. But again, somewhat muted treble, if you know that may or may not be your thing. But you know, I can pick them up and listen to them exclusively, and as long as I don't compare, it's a more relaxing, more easily listening sound and less fatiguing than some of the others, where you bright treble can pick up sibilance and can pick up some nasty things in some of the recordings I have. And again, you know, it's different kind of totally opposite presentation to something like the Atlas, which is thumping bass, you know, really bright treble, really brings out the best in high quality acoustic recordings, whereas these are a little bit more easygoing. And now, as my first pair of laser scanned Ultimate Ears monitors, I know that I can go onto their site and order a pair of IEMs and get a consistent result without having to have my ears molded yet again. So that's the Ultimate Ears Reference Remastered. And I hope you did like the video. If you do have any questions or comments, if you liked the video, if you didn't like the video, what didn't you like? What did I miss? Please tell me and post them in the comments below the video. Once again, thank you to the people who supported me on Patreon. They are the reason I'm able to make more videos. And if you're interested in helping out for the cost of buying me a coffee occasionally, as little as $1 a month, you can help me make these videos and help me review more gear, and in the future do things like interview people in the industry, go to shows, report on those, and you'll see more cool stuff coming up. Also, do check out my website if you haven't, here.reviews. And if sending me $1 a month or more isn't your kind of thing, clicking on the links in the sidebar and buying your headphones through those links will also send me a couple of dollars and in turn help me make more videos. So thank you once again, and I'll see you online.